Welcome to Gamers Platform.
Yeah! Good. Oh, baby! Look at that!
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Adam Wolf from Gamers Platform. Today, I've got a very special video for you. This is the unboxing of my streaming computer. I have been waiting so many years for this. I'm not even joking. I mean, I have my old computer over there. Sorry, trying to look in. It's over there. It's the FX 8370 AMD processor, and back in the day I tried to use that as a streaming computer, but for whatever reason it couldn't do 1080p. It could barely do 720, which was so strange. I'm like, this is a gaming processor and somehow it can't do what I want it to do. So this is the build that I've been working on for months now, and I say working on, it's really just getting the money together and putting it together. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, I needed new hardware. So we're going to go over all of this today. As you can see, it's actually going to be a very small form factor, and a mini ITX motherboard. So let's get into it. To kick things off, we've got the AMD Ryzen 5 2400G. And the reason I went with this one, and if you don't know, this is an APU. Okay, that means that the processor, or the CPU, and the GPU are all in one chip. There it is right there. There's a little chip right there. Chip. And so the reason I went with this is because this is predominantly going to be a streaming / editing computer sort of thing. And there's no reason to have this doesn't come with a graphics card, or at least there will be no graphics card in this machine because there's only one PCI slot, and that slot is going to be used up by the capture card. So I went with an APU so that way something could be displayed on the screen. And since it doesn't need a whole lot of graphics power to really stream properly, it's a lot of the CPU work. This will be just fine. Now the graphics card will actually come in handy when I do decide to render out any videos, but you know, when it comes to streaming, the CPU is predominantly the piece that actually gets used. This is a quad-core 8-thread CPU, and this should be plenty fine for streaming at 1080p, you know, and maybe higher if I ever want to, but since I don't have a 4K capture card yet, I actually was planning on getting the capture card as well, but I don't need it at the moment, you know, one day I'll get it, but for right now we're sticking to 1080p, so this should be more than enough and more than capable of actually streaming at 1080p and rendering content as such. Hell, I'm actually rendering more content at 4K these days. I'm basically just recording in 1080p and upscaling, but still, the same applies. And this, of course, is the motherboard that processor will be going into. We've got the Asus Prime A320i-K. This is actually not a bad choice because I had decided at one point, is that my face reflected in it is. Well, it's okay. It's mostly the post of the bed, but my head is there too. See, that's my head. I went with this one simply because not only was it cheaper than the option that I actually wanted to go with, which also was an Asus motherboard, but it came with one extra display type, which I'm happy about because I have 3 monitors and I wanted to be able to use 2. The other motherboard, which came at around $150, only had one display type, which was HDMI. This one actually comes with HDMI and DisplayPort, which is kind of crazy to think about when we're talking about a mini ITX board. I mean, you've got space for, there's the one PCI Express slot, then you've got the M.2 slot right here, and only 2 slots of DDR of RAM, two slots for RAM. Words. But right up here, this is where the 2 different display types are. You got HDMI, I think, on top, if I'm not mistaken, and then DisplayPort on the bottom. And it comes with a handful of USB ports in the back. I believe we've got two sets of USB 3, so 2 here and I think 2 here, and then 2 USB 2.0 right here along with sound, and a PS2, like I'm talking PS/2 combo socket, so for keyboard or mouse that may or may not have the old PS2 connector. And I think it's fantastic to have that because it's perfect for troubleshooting if something happens and you're only able to get into safe mode where USB ports, I believe, generally are shut down. You can use that analog port to actually, take care of business. But it does come with Aura Sync. I'm not really worried about the RGB aspect of this, just simply because it's going to be in an enclosed case and nobody's going to be seeing it, so it doesn't really matter to me. But I'm very excited because this thing was a great find. And going in those only two slots, I should say, for RAM is the Corsair Vengeance. It's LPX, 32 gigs. I went with 32. I was going to go with 16, but I feel like 32 would be more than adequate, and certainly I would love the buffer just in case it needs any extra memory, which I doubt, but you can never go wrong at 3000 megahertz. Now I believe the motherboard is going to require some overclocking unless the motherboard will overclock by itself. I may need to overclock this to 3000 megahertz specifically for that motherboard, because the motherboard I think only supports up to 2400, which is the base clock speed for most DDR4 and what most motherboards are programmed to handle. Anything above 2400 megahertz, then you have to do some overclocking. Sorry about that. That's my necklace if you guys can hear that. But I did go with low profile because, again, it's the RGB doesn't matter. It's not going to be seen, so who cares? So low profile, blacked out, 3000 megahertz, 32 gigs. I can't wait to just throw this in here. And I don't expect a huge performance increase, but you can never go wrong with faster speed RAM, and certainly more of it. I'm actually thinking about adding more RAM into my gaming machine after this, because 16 gigs is becoming less and less more useful. And of course, going into that M.2 slot, we've got an SSD, and it's a very generic SSD. It's one that I acquired, and it's really not anything special. It's 256 gigs, which is all I'm going to be using right now. I have a 10 terabyte external that I keep all my work on, so this is strictly for the fact that it's fast enough, way faster, sorry for the focusing, way faster than a SATA or a SSD, regular SSD 2.5-inch drive, and of course way faster than a hard drive. So this will be useful for recording, especially if I do actually want to try recording at 4K. This is fast enough to handle it. It's got more than enough space to handle large file sizes, because 4K, depending on how large or how long the video is, it could get quite large. This is more than adequate to actually handle everything I need it to do, given, the very few programs that'll be installed on it. It'll have plenty of space for recording. And then once I'm done recording, all that footage goes over to the 10 terabyte hard drive anyway. So that's pretty much all there is to say about this. Now, powering all of this power, we've got the Corsair CX450M. It's a semi-modular power supply. And if the picture is to be believed, obviously, there's only 4 slots. It's really not that... I don't need a lot of power, because the CPU is actually pretty low power. I believe it's a 95 watt CPU. I'll have to double check that. It may be a little bit more, seeing as how it's got a CPU and GPU in it. The RAM doesn't need a whole lot of power. The capture card certainly doesn't need a whole lot of power. So 450 watts is more than efficient and more than adequate enough to actually do what I want it to do. We can actually see the power cables that it comes with. Let me get this back in the frame here. We got the 24-pin power connector. We've got an 8-pin power connector, 6 and 8 pin, so it's basically a split 6 and 8 pin. So if you really wanted, you could hook up a graphics card if you really needed to. It's got SATA cables, it's got Molex cables, and it's got a floppy drive adapter, which nobody uses. So I didn't go anything fancy. Didn't really want to go. I mean, fully modular power supply would have been nice, but it's no big deal. it's more than enough. I like the semi-modular anyway, because at least the 24 pin is always connected. That's the only thing that's actually connected to the supply itself. Everything else is replaceable and swappable. This is 80 plus bronze certified. I really honestly don't pay attention to these, so you know, cool, but it's definitely going to be enough. And believe it or not, yes, this is an ATX power supply, and even though it's a mini ITX build, the case actually supports standard ATX power supplies, and the case is what we're going to be talking about next. And last but not least, the case. I had to actually tilt the camera up to actually get all of this in frame. So this is the Cooler Master Elite 130. It's a cube case. I like to call it a cube case. I don't know what they really call it, but it's a small form factor mini ITX case that obviously houses only mini ITX boards. I think it's only mini ITX. I'm not 100% sure on that, but they give a nice little feature breakdown. It's got a mesh front panel, which is fine. So mesh front for better breathability. Woo, say that 10 times fast. It does support liquid cooling up to 120 millimeters, which is crazy to think about. You know, it's not a super small case, but it's smaller than a regular tower. And to be able to fit 120 millimeter rad in it is pretty impressive. So if I ever want to go cooling, which I will not be because the CPU comes with its own Wraith cooler anyway, I'd be able to throw 120 millimeter rad in there. It can hold up to 1 optical drive, 3 hard drives or SSDs, which is, again, super impressive for the size of this computer case. It can hold up to 3 hard drives. Hard drives are 3.5 inches in size. They're pretty big, but it can hold 3 of them. That's pretty crazy. Now, I think this is or. I don't know if it's like up to 1 optical drive or 3 hard drives or 3 SSDs, or maybe this is and. So an optical drive and 3 hard drives and SSDs, which would be even crazier. I don't know. High-end support full-size PSU, which we just talked about. Long VGAs, which actually my current graphics card R9 390 could actually, I think, fit in this, which is crazy. And then, of course, high-speed USB ports. I believe that means 3.0 on the front panel, which is fine. I mean, you know, 3.0 is 3.0 and it's faster than 2.0, but you know, they're just convenient to have. So yeah, this is more of like not really an unboxing. It's unboxing and build video. It's not a guide. I just wanted to show you guys the build process that I take, and you know, actually turning these things into computers. Big surprise, you know, there's a million YouTube videos out there about this kind of crap, but you know, hey, you come here for me, right? Huh? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Let's get to building. Now, while you're watching this video, I really want you guys to keep a couple things in mind. First and foremost, please forgive me for my cinematography. Although I enjoy being behind the camera, I am in no way, shape, or form good at this. I had a really hard time trying to find angles that were good enough. So I think the next time I do any kind of build, I'm just gonna do a live commentary or something like that, maybe a live stream of it. I'm just no good at, you know, getting the right angles here, so you know, please forgive that. The second thing is, this is definitely one of the lighter builds that I've done for sure. I mean, there's practically nothing in it. You got the motherboard, the power supply, and the capture card, but really that's it. I mean, As you guys saw, the M.2 is right on the board, so it doesn't really add any extra weight. And the case itself is nice and small, and it's really compact, and it's sitting nicely under my desk. So it all worked out, and I'm actually really happy that it's as light as it is. Third thing is that cable management really, you guys will see in this footage, it's really not necessary. There's so much room at the front end of the case, and you know, it's not glass or anything, so you're not going to see the inside, so it didn't really seem necessary to really do any kind of major cable management other than just to keep the cables out of the way of the fans, any of the fans really. And so I didn't really have much of a reason to do any major cable management. I gotta say though, this case is extremely quiet, and I'm happy about that. I need something quieter than my main tower to do, you know, to record for and everything. So happy about that. And the fourth thing, most importantly, never, ever, 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 ever build on your bed. Never do that. Now, I'm an idiot, so I'll build wherever I can because I don't have a desk or anything that's like big or some sort of work table or anything like that. But the possibility of static electricity is high, and so that's why I kept components off the bed and, you know, on the case or on boxes. I wore rubber gloves. I was wearing my boots, which are clearly rubber on the bottom. So I myself was grounded, but that doesn't mean static electricity could not happen. And I got lucky. I got lucky with my computer. It turned on first time. It worked first time. I installed Windows, got everything installed, and it's fine. However, I do not advise doing that ever. Okay, unless you're willing to potentially have the problem of something shorting out and breaking and you having to replace said broken thing. But overall, I'm so happy. This is years in the making. I have been needing a separate computer to do my streaming because I just can't play some of my PC games while streaming at the same time. It just takes too much out of the machine. It takes too many resources. And no, that's not because it's a Ryzen. All right, it's not because it's AMD. It does fine. It's just it still takes resources away. Whether or not it's a lot or a little, it still takes away from what I want the machine to do. So a separate streaming computer completely dedicated to streaming, recording, and editing, by the way, all in one here, is really going to be a game changer for me personally as a streamer, as a content creator, producer, whatever you want to call me. I like to say producer because I do produce content. So, and it sounds cooler, ladies. Anyway, so I'm really happy with the results, and everything went a lot smoother than it should have been, or should have gone. Let's be honest. Something had to go wrong, and it didn't. So this is good. This is good. I'm really happy, and hopefully I didn't just jinx myself. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you dislike these kinds of videos, thumbs down. That's okay. Get subscribed if you haven't already. And until next time, I'm Adam Wolf, and I will see you guys in the next one.